Hey everyone, Rob from Southgate Media Group here. Before we get started with this podcast, we have a quick message. If this is your first time checking out the show, we love that you found us and we really hope you enjoy it. What we have to say is for the subscribers. If you enjoy our shows, would you please donate to help keep these going? We don't want to have to put traditional ads on these shows, but this does cost money, so we really do rely heavily on donations. To make a donation to the show, please go to our website, www.southgatemediagroup.com. Go to the page for the show, and in the upper right-hand corner is a donate button. It takes you right to PayPal, and you can donate whatever amount you want. Thanks a lot for listening, everybody. And now, on with the show.
And hello and welcome to the SuperConnectivity Podcast, the first podcast of the year. Yay! Happy New Year to you, Phil.
Happy New Year.
And as always, I am your host, the Chuck Full of Nuts, Charlie Esser. And with me, as always, is my co-host.
I think I've been playing this game wrong the last couple of weeks. I'll go with the Flying Phil Parrish.
Ooh, good one, the Flying Phil Parrish. So, as we all know, SuperConnectivity is tied to the Nuff Said podcast, and many people out there may think there was no Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. this week, but they were wrong. Because this week, on Wednesday, we got the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. comic book, fresh in stores. I did have the chance to read it, and it is a very interesting take on our friends from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but also, it's interesting because it is officially and seemingly set in the 616, but sort of reintroduces us to Phil Coulson, who had already been introduced to us both in the Battle Scars Limited series and again in Secret Avengers. Did you have the chance to read either? Have you read either Battle Scars or Secret Avengers, Phil?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Well, I did read Battle Scars. I have sadly not had the chance to really follow Secret Avengers since it became more Phil Coulson centric, and that now I'm kicking myself for that fact. But it's one of those things when you're counting up your money every month and figuring out what do you have to buy and what sadly has to go. And Secret Avengers did not make the cut for me. It has been very popular though, and surely no doubt to Phil Coulson. But what's interesting about the new Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which again features Agent Phil Coulson, as well as Agent Melinda May, the Cavalry, and Agents Fitz and Simmons. And they pair themselves, Secret Avengers style, with various other superheroes from the Marvel Universe. And what's interesting is that we get this whole Phil Coulson life timeline. Now, when we were first introduced to Phil Coulson in Battle Scars, he was introduced as Cheese, is what they kept on calling him, what Marcus Johnson always called him, who, of course, is Nick Fury Jr., because obviously didn't want to reveal too much too early. So they always referred to him by the nickname Cheese. And he was sort of his military buddy I believe they were in Afghanistan. And Cheese helps him when he goes on the run when all these people are trying to kill him because people have found out that he is Nick Fury Jr. and want to kill him for that. Now, in this incarnation of Phil Coulson, we see him get a little timeline. We see him at age 9, at age 18 in college, and we see that he has this just obsessive interest in superheroes. And he's like cataloging all of the various superhero powers and power sets and histories. And when he becomes an analyst for S.H.I.E.L.D., that becomes his claim to fame, is his encyclopedic knowledge of all of the superheroes and supervillains and how best to match them together. And again, this I'm sure ties into what they've done in the Secret Avengers with this system of running Avengers teams through S.H.I.E.L.D. And in our story this week, what we'll find is Phil Coulson and, of course, Fitzsimmons and May bringing in Valkyrie and Dane Whitman, the Black Knight, when a terrorist gets hold of Heimdall's sword and starts wreaking havoc as havoc gets wreaked, and it's an interesting story, fantastic artwork. But like I said, what keeps on sticking with me is this fact that we have this new character who seems to be getting yet another retcon, or perhaps if we are to no prize it, perhaps there's a backstory here that Phil Coulson, when he was paired up with Marcus Johnson in Afghanistan, that was a deeper plot by Nick Fury to sort of have this agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. with him to watch over him. So, which makes for an interesting question as to whether or not, well, I'm sure their friendship was real or developed as real, but that it started out perhaps as Nick Fury's attempt to keep an eye on his son. So it's a very interesting book. I highly recommend you pick it up, Phil. And I think I need to start picking up the Secret Avengers now just to make sure it all ties together. It all connects superbly.
Yeah, you said no prize. We should give out no prizes.
Yes, well, I actually have won a no prize.
Oh yeah?
I did win a no prize. Although I'm a little I'm not disappointed to have won the no prize, but I won a no prize in Fantastic Four. And they sent it to you digitally now, which is very nice. And actually, I came across it when I was cleaning up my inbox today. I said, "Oh yeah, my no prize." What it was this was Hickman had promised a no prize to whomever could explain why someone else's theory was wrong, which I was able to do. His statement was that this was when Nathaniel Richards was playing with the Fantastic Four at the time, was interacting with the Fantastic Four again, and they had said that that Nathaniel had to protect Reed. This person had this theory that Nathaniel had to protect Reed because he didn't want to run the risk of hurting his timeline. No, not Nathaniel. Maybe Kang, because of course Kang is a descendant of Reed Richards, and Kang couldn't just kill Reed Richards because that would disrupt his timeline. But of course, the point Hickman said, but there's actually two reasons why that's not the case, and of course those two reasons are Franklin and Valeria, who could also be the descendants of or the progenitors, and logically are the progenitor. One of them is the progenitor of Kang. To get deep in the weeds, and that's how I won my no prize. Was I was able to explain why this other guy was wrong, but it wasn't a proper no prize for finding a mistake and then explaining it away. And so it's great to have a no prize, but it kind of feels a little cheap sometimes because it wasn't really under the proper rules of no prizery. So
hey, a win's a win.
A win's a win. That's true. And because it's digital, I was actually able to put it up on my Facebook wall. It was wonderful.
Cool.
Although a kid in my Cub Scout troop, actually I think we were Boy Scouts at the time. Well, he might have been a Cub Scout when he got it, but Bill Seary, he actually got a real no prize, and where he got the actual paper envelope, and yes, but was upset, of course, when he opened it and found out there was nothing in the envelope, because that was the thing. They'd send you a no prize, and said this envelope contains an official no prize, and because there is no prize in the envelope.
So what did they email you? A picture of an empty envelope?
Yeah, they emailed me what is essentially a GIF of the or GIF of the envelope. It's just the picture. It has a cartoon picture of the Hulk reading a comic book, the old Hulk read image from the 60s, if you remember that. If you go back that far or have those old comic books, that's what it was. So, yeah, so I do have a no prize. I'm very proud of that. And that's
congratulations. Congratulations.
But yes, we should give out no prizes or some kind of. Hey, we have sound effects. Thank you, Phil.
Well, you said last week you were like, "Why don't you ever use sound effects with me?"
Yeah, because I felt hurt. It's like, that's for other people's podcasts, but for us, no, we're not good enough for sound effects. So now we have sound effects. Great. So that was my big read this week was Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. What did you read anything this week that really struck you as fascinating?
Well, I didn't get anything new this week. But you know what I did get for Christmas? Some about half of the issues, like, just scattered all over the series of, you remember the Doctor Strange Sorcerer Supreme series
Oh yes, yes, I love that.
from like the late 80s into the 90s?
Yeah, I remember that one. My favorite storyline in that was the Faust Gambit, where what's his name, Mordo sells his soul to both Satanish and Mephisto to gain like extreme mystical power, so he could defeat Strange. Knowing that, of
Hmm.
course, once the demons came to claim his soul, they'd have to fight each other to figure out who actually got his soul. So it was a great little story there. Oh yeah, I love that. I love that series. That was a good series actually. Uh,
Hmm. Yeah.
yes. Now Doctor Strange, he's getting his movie soon with apparently Benedict Cumberbatch. Which I'm still not sure how I feel about that. I don't know. Uh,
Yeah, but you always got to wait and see for the guy, because remember back in 1989, everyone was like, Michael Keaton is Batman.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But I just don't want him to British him up too much. That's my only worry,
Yeah.
because he's a New York doctor. He's hip and fly and rocks a cool mustache. These are important
Hmm.
aspects of the Doctor Strange mythos. Um,
So I'm sure once the movie hits, or right before, right after, we're gonna get another Doctor Strange ongoing series, correct?
one would imagine so. If we don't get it sooner, I mean,
Because there's an Ant-Man series coming, I think this month.
yep, yep. They have the new Ant-Man coming out. They also have a new Peggy Carter series coming out this month.
Oh yeah.
Yes, Peggy Carter and Howard Stark, extraterrestrial investigators. Now the question in that is: are they investigating extraterrestrials? Or are they investigating things extraterrestrially?
Hmm.
You know, are they
Maybe both.
are they going to go chase down some Kree, or the Kree going to come to us? That's the question. Because of course we're all Kree all the
Um.
time right now.
Yeah. Are we gonna get a bunch of retcon stories where the Skrulls and the Kree and everyone else was on Earth before the appearance of like the Fantastic Four or anyone
Oh
else?
well, they've done that a lot. Well, first of the Kree actually have been on Earth long before,
Yeah. 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 Oh
because the
yeah.
Kree, of course, had the Inhumans in the blue area, and
Hmm.
they've been mucking around for a long time, and so presumably the Skrulls have been too. I think basically what the official rule on it right now is that up until recent, and actually, well, that's actually the interesting thing is if you read Hickman's Order of the Shield, you see that like it all starts in ancient Egypt when I believe there was a brood invasion,
Hmm.
and this sort of proto Captain Egypt, I guess we'll call him, who has the shield, is the he and his cohorts defeat the brood and send them back with their primitive spears and shields, and that's when they form the Order of the Shield to protect Earth from alien invasion. So, it's sort of this ongoing thing with Marvel now, where basically, this whole superheroic age has goes back even further than anyone ever realized. Although that is an interesting thing, because I used to love to read the old Marvel Universe books, and I really wish to do another great little Marvel Universe series where they just gave you that whole detail on everybody, book by book by book. But I know that's a Herculean task. So especially with as many new characters as they have now, but that was actually one of the things they mention in that is they give you all this history, and they point out that there's this long tradition on the 616 universe of people dressing up in costume to fight to become vigilantes, and that's sort of why it never seems odd to people, because there had always been this long-standing tradition going back to various and sundry masked heroes of the ancient past. Most notably, of course, in the Old West books, but they've even moved it back. And of course, Leonardo da Vinci is a member of the Order of the Shield in the comics as well, which is pretty awesome. And Tesla, who is sort of it's never quite clear if he's a member of Shield or if he's sort of. I think he's actually supposed to be. He's like considered a threat to Shield. He's one of these rogue agents. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Order. I tell you, if you ever get the chance to pick up Hickman's Shield series, pick it up. I mean, it is some grand steampunk Marvel universing going on in there, and it's pretty awesome. Da Vinci and Newton's the bad guy. And I don't know if he ever really resolved what Newton goes on to do, but it seems to be implied. I always took it to mean that sort of Newton, and I'm waiting for them to do this, where they reveal that like the Order of the Shield had a splinter group, which is Hydra, which is the Order of the Hydra, and that's sort of what Hydra became, and it's like this ancient battle between these two integrated and similar groups, as Grant Ward says, trying to achieve world peace, by any means necessary. Yes, but so Doctor Strange coming up soon, and Ant-Man coming out, and of course, let's see here, what else is going on in the world of super connected comic books? I'm trying to think here.
I was gonna say I had a thought today. This hasn't happened, but you know what I thought would be an awesome, probably a miniseries.
What would that?
Not just because of their names, but because like after Axis, Tony Stark's temperament now.
Mm-hmm.
I think we need like 4 or 6 issue miniseries: Superior Iron Man versus Superior Spider-Man.
Oh, that would be awesome.
Use time travel, use whatever you have to get these two fighting.
Well, like I said, I think we're gonna get Superior Spider-Man back at the end of this because he was very popular. It's like I mean after after Bucky Cap ended, they kept Winter Soldier around because he was just too popular to kill. And I think that they've been trying to think, well, how can we get Otto back? And honestly, I want to see him and Marconi develop their relationship because they're a cute couple. So I really want to see that happen. So I'd like to see alternate timeline. Well, because with all of the spiders all gathered together, who knows how it's going to break out. So it's entirely possible that we do get a Superior Spider-Man in there, and Superior Spider-Man versus Superior Iron Man would be wonderful.
Yes, and Marvel, it'll sell.
Yeah, well, it absolutely will. Well, I think Superior Iron Man is doing well, and I'm really loving that story. I'm waiting to see exactly how it's going to play out because it's interesting to see how it's all going to play out into the ongoing Avengers storyline, which is set, of course, like 6 months in the future, where seemingly that is Superior Iron Man in there. So at some point, Superior Iron Man gets captured by Steve Rogers. It's all very interesting because that sort of seems to imply that Axis happened before the White events or something like that. It's hard exactly to figure out Well, although actually, I guess because when we jumped ahead, that's right. When we jumped ahead, we didn't know where Iron Man was, and then when we got the reveal, and it was the Superior Iron Man after Superior Iron Man came out. So yeah, so actually it does make sense chronologically. But that's always that problem that you have with Marvel and trying to line up your timelines. And to tie it back to Agents of Shield comic, it's hard to the hardest thing with that is just that real life Clark Gregg is 52. I don't think that comic book Phil Coulson is 52. In fact, I'd say he's probably at most 30s or 40s, but he's seemingly a contemporary of Marcus Johnson, who is I guess we assume he's a master sergeant because he was a Sergeant Fury. We assume he's a master sergeant career soldier. That might make some sense. That he would be friends with him, but it's hard to sort out exactly. But presumably Phil Coulson, even though he looks a lot like 52-year-old Clark Gregg, is younger Phil Coulson. So of course Clark Gregg's a very well preserved man. So
yeah, don't go by the actors' ages. Isn't Robert Downey Jr. like 50 years old?
He's 103. Yes, he is.
But I mean, Tony Stark in the comics and the movies isn't 50 years old.
Oh yeah. Well, but that's always the very complex problem that they have with these characters because of course, I mean that's Marvel's biggest problem is that they have characters that are tied to certain points in history. So you have Howard Stark was a guy in World War II. Now even if we assume that he's this 18-year-old super genius billionaire, or like, because Cap was only like 18 years old when he was 18, 19 years old when he became Cap. So we can assume that maybe, so although Peggy doesn't seem to be 18, 19 years old. It's all very interesting how they muck with their timelines here and there, But
And you never know, if they go after extraterrestrial things, they could get frozen for a couple of years. There could be time travel involved.
yeah, there's all sorts of things. But that's always their problem with their being bound to that 1940s start date, and that that's why you have these problems with Peggy Carter. You have the problem which you always had with Peggy Carter, and then to the Sharon Carter, from sister to aunt to great aunt. It's always a little difficult to break it all down. But if you just don't look too hard, it works out, and that I think is what Marvel counts on, is that you're not going to let that you don't look too hard, and you just appreciate it for how they're going to play it out. Which I think is the better way to do it anyway. Let's see here. So, other thing I did finally get the chance to read is I read the End of Axis with Tony Stark protecting himself from the inversion and effectively protecting both Alex Summers and Sabretooth. So now Alex Summers is a bad guy, which means that he's all buddy with Scott Summers again, and Sabretooth is now a good guy. Is the new Wolverine, essentially.
Yep.
Which is an interesting choice, I'm interested to see how that plays out, and what Sabretooth does with this newfound conscience. Although like I said, I find that very interesting, this idea of growing a conscience for sociopaths, is suddenly having to deal with this idea that he doesn't want to hurt people anymore. And but at times, that's sort of the thing, is that of course Wolverine was the guy who didn't want to hurt people, but he did when he had to, and often found he had to.
Yeah, well, magic spells.
Yeah, magic spells. They're. And what I found really interesting is, so now at the very end of that, we see that we have evil Doctor Doom again, which no doubt ties into the evil Doctor Doom we see in the Avengers storyline with Valeria, who has captured the Molecule Man, and he also has the evil Red Skull, but sort of trapped. And I wonder how that's going to play out, how he's going to utilize the Charles Xavier empowered Red Skull to his own ends. This Doctor Doom guy, he's trouble.
I'm just waiting to see how they bring back Charles Xavier one day, because they're going to, but meanwhile half his brain's missing.
Well, that's one thing. I tell you, I just have to say, this whole he's stolen Xavier's brain and put it inside it. How does that even work? How do you put someone else's brain inside your brain without, like...
Yeah, you would have to cut out like half of your brain first before you put,
Yeah, and not only that, but it's like, first off, it was a dead brain he got there, so they had to basically rebuild the brain. I'm sure Arnim Zola could do that, and I'm sure this is all Zola stuff, But it definitely seems a little weird that they were able but I guess we just went along with it, But
and he seemed to know how to use that brain right away too.
Yeah, well, I guess like when I first thought about it, I was like, oh, well, maybe he's just got the brain like hooked up to a machine, and that's how he's doing it. But no, it's in his head, and that's just weird. I don't know, but we're not going to look too closely at it. That's the moral. Don't look too close. There you go. Yes. So from what we can see, Doctor Doom has Charles Xavier brain, Red Skull, and in coming up he has Molecule Man all under his sway. That's a pretty dangerous combination. especially because we're going to see, how that relates to everything else with these white events, which no doubt leads us to our Secret Wars battle coming up. And of course, that really strongly suggests we're going to see the Beyonder again. Now, of course, once you see the Beyonder, as we know, you can get anyone back. That's the fun of the Beyonder, and that's the that's the interesting thing here is, and of course it all starts with, Age of Ultron and shattering the timeline, and now we're breaking down the barriers between the universes. Yeah, it makes it hard not to think that Marvel is looking to go do a massive reboot.
Yeah, well, I was thinking, if nothing else, do you think this is going to be Secret Wars is going to be another one of their reset buttons where they can bring back any of the characters they want to have died, like Wolverine or Charles Xavier?
Oh well, certainly they can do that. I mean, as was established, that the Beyonder, as we talked about last week, the Beyonder brought back Doctor Doom for the Secret Wars just because he couldn't find him, and so he just plucked him out of the timeline and put him down. So since we're dealing with alternate timelines and alternate moving between universes, I think it is absolutely true that we will be able to get all sorts of characters back.
I think it's going to be just like remember House of M, when the Scarlet Witch reset reality, and then when she put it back, Hawkeye, who had been killed months before, was automatically brought back to life.
Yeah, and that's actually one of those weird things, because there's I'm not, because there was actually a whole storyline in She-Hulk at that time, and the suggestion in that was that the reason he came back was because She-Hulk slipped him a note to warn him about his impending death. Now, I don't know if that works into it, and that's like your chaos magic, that everything fell into place so that's how he would come back.
Yeah, because the Avengers both, I thought it kind of said that he just appeared, and like the last thing he remembered was his death, and then the next thing he remembered was standing there after House of M.
Yeah, very, very strange. Yeah, but and that's how we got the Two-Gun Kid in the future too, which was because that was when the She-Hulk was part of the Magistrati and was dealing with a case for the Time Variance Authority was trial for something, and she won the trial and was able to bring back Two-Gun Kid to the future. And yeah, that's so many strange things that go on in this universe. She-Hulk, and She-Hulk series has ended, and that's so sad. But I love She-Hulk, man. She is really such an awesome character, and I so hope she comes into something in the MCU.
That's what I was gonna say. That's how she'll get her book back, if they need to put her in one of the movies or something.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I would love to see Jen Walters as a lawyer first. I really want to see her as this. Heck, I'd love to see her in the Daredevil series. As this, very tough prosecutor or defense attorney or something, where she's going to be crossing briefs with. That'd be interesting. Get a Jen Walters, Matt Murdock love triangle going on, or that's a story right there. Although other interesting lawyers, famous comic book lawyers, we could see. Let's see here. Bernie was a lawyer, Cap's old girlfriend. Bernie Rosenthal was a lawyer, as was another girlfriend of Cap's. Cap dated a lot of pretty hot lawyers at one point, which was, I believe her name was Carmen Ferrari. Yeah, dated her briefly. So yeah, Cap is Cap really gets around. For a guy that's got this Boy Scout image, he has been with a lot of women.
2 lawyers. Then he was with Diamondback.
He was with Diamondback. He's been with Black Widow, Sharon Carter, and Peggy Carter. He was with Diamondback. He was with let's see, who else has he been with? He's been with a lot of people. honestly, probably at least as well. I don't want to say at least as many as She-Hulk because that's sort of a go-to gag with them in She-Hulk. Although that was actually someone from Universe A, which
I think I don't know the only person who might beat Captain America is Daredevil.
oh yeah, Daredevil, and they cross over a lot. They've got that. They're definitely like 1 degree of separation. Daredevil and Black Widow had a thing too. So
Yeah.
uh,
And Hawkeye.
yeah. So well, that'll be that would be interesting is to see Black Widow in the Daredevil series.
Oh yeah.
I think that that's what they really want to do with Black Widow is really just pepper her about, rather than having her own film. Is just making sure she's making as many appearances and as many other things, which that's between ScarJo's agents and them, but I think that's a pretty good outcome. Although it's interesting, whether or not that's as good for her. Whether or not the cachet of having the Black Widow movie is more important than say just the constant work.
Mm-hmm.
Because work is nice when you're an actor, and but also it's nice to be the movie star. And going down to a Netflix series, maybe that's not as interesting. Oh, there's a lot of movie stars who are doing those now, so it's the whole format of everything is changing, and
Yep.
and the interview feeds into that with its direct release on demand, really pulling in a lot of money. And the thing about on demand is, the network or the studios actually make more money on demand products than they do on theaters. It's which makes sense because it's got super expensive distribution, and if you have that super inexpensive distribution, you get most of that money to yourself. You don't have to pay for the building and the ushers and everything that goes into distributing a film. And I think it really moves the entire business model of the entire entertainment industry in general shift, and that's an interesting question. There is film going to be as important as these digital media? And once you get into this idea of the digital media is a just as relevant way of moving the entertainment, then is there a difference between making a film for the theaters or making a film for Google Play or Netflix or however you want to break it down?
Oh, I'm sure all the studios would rather go digital.
Oh well, that's interesting because you have to remember that there's a lot of egos in Hollywood.
Yeah.
And that's why they have prestige pictures. That's why they make why films like Unbroken get made. Because they want an Oscar for that. Because they want to stroke their ego. They want to say we are making these great artistic films. Which may or may not make money. So it's a very interesting thing about Hollywood because as much as money is the driving factor in it, there really is a lot of that. We want to there's lots of ways to make money, and the people who make films went into that because that's how they wanted to make money. And, and if you're investing in films, you're investing in films because you want to invest in films. There's a lot of safer, better investments. In fact, I would wager that probably, returns on films, generally speaking, aren't nearly as good as most other traditional forms of investment, but you get that cachet of saying, well, I'm a film producer, I'm making a movie, and that's worth it to me, So, I don't know if that's going to be as powerful when it becomes I'm making a digital production,
Yeah, but the way I see it, like a lot of the actors or artists, they want as many people to see their product as possible. And plus, the studios, I mean, they want you get that big investment if you can save money. And I think when you don't have to deal with theaters, you don't have to put film out, you save money. But also, if you put it digital, like on Netflix or however you get it, how many more people do you think are going to see their movie on opening day if they don't have to go to a theater, get in the car, drive to the theater, do this, that? If they can just sit on their couch, hit a button, and there's the movie.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting question because, that's sort of the thing is like for me, on-demand and digital media, it works exactly counter to seeing it right when it comes out, because I know it's
Hmm.
there. And because I'm
That's
not in a
true.
rush to go see it, it actually, because as an example, even though I know interviews there and I want to see interview, I haven't
Hmm.
actually gotten the chance to just sit down and download it. Whereas if it was in the theater, I still might have difficulty going to see it, but because it's something that I have to make an appointment to see, I'm probably
Hmm.
much more likely to make that appointment for something I really want to see.
It probably wouldn't work for stuff like that, but it's Friday night. Say you knew Avengers 2 was on your Netflix right now, and all you had to do to watch it was hit a button.
Yeah. But
Would you do it this first night?
mm,
Avengers
yeah,
2?
well, I mean,
Age of Ultron?
yeah, well now that's the interesting thing because now when Avengers comes out, I'm going to see that multiple times. And and obviously, yeah, if I could see it right now, yeah, heck, I'd watch it on my phone, even though I know it's going to be so much better on the screen, you know.
Mhm.
Um, but the thing is that, what makes a film like that big is that you watch it in the theater and you watch it more than once and you go back and you see it again in the theater. And if I just bought it once, I'd still watch it multiple times, but each extra time I'm watching it, they're not getting that extra buck, you know.
Yeah.
I mean that's
Yeah.
the thing. And in that sense, that's where it becomes a much more complex question for Scarlett Johansson because yeah, she'll get a lot more people to see her if she's doing all these other smaller pieces. But if she's not getting her Black Widow film, it's a much harder. If she's not getting that Black Widow film, she's not getting that central starring role that's getting people to repeatedly see it, and she's not getting that cachet that comes from having people plunk down,
Mhm.
$7 to $15 a ticket to go see her. That's
Well, do you think that's her decision not to do a Black Widow movie just because maybe she wants to do other projects and didn't she have a child not too long ago? And
no, I think that is purely Marvel's choice. I think that. I mean, no,
hmm,
I think she want. I mean, clearly, I think if one thing Lucy taught us is that she wants to be the action adventure starring role character. She
yeah,
wants to be the lead, and I mean, the only issue that you might see would be if maybe she's not happy with whatever Black Widow script they have. But I got to imagine that that wouldn't be the case. I think that at the moment, I think Marvel is well, like I said before, I think one of their biggest fears with Black Widow as a film is that they're worried if they give Black Widow a standalone and it makes $1 billion, they've just created another Robert Downey
Robert Downey
Jr. that
Jr.
they're going to have to deal with come Avengers, come Avengers 3. Because, if Black Widow
Hmm.
says, well, I don't want to be in Avengers 3, uh,
And do you think they're trying to diversify their movies? That like maybe they're afraid that everyone's just gonna be like, oh, Black Widow's a female Captain America.
I think they're diversifying their movies because they first off they can, and second off they need to, because they
Hmm.
don't want to be in this situation where every single member of the Avengers is super expensive. They want.
Hmm.
Like I said, I think that Avengers 3 most likely is going to be focused on Cap's kooky quartet. It's going to be Cap, Black Widow, Hawkeye. Well, Black Widow wasn't part of the quartet, so it'd be the Kooky Quintet. But it'll be Hawkeye, Black
That's.
Widow, Scarlet Witch, and Quicksilver and Cap. Um,
Hmm.
and because I think that that's where they want to be. They want to be in this place where they can start swapping in and out actors and characters in the same way they do with the books. Whereas every time they create a new Avengers, they say, okay, who are we going to put in this one? And sometimes when Avengers is the big book, then they put in Thor and Hulk and Iron Man. And when when Avengers is not as big of a book, then you get Dr. Druid and and Captain Marvel and all these other characters who are like, oh yeah, them. It's of course it's always weirdest when they do that with the Fantastic Four. And I remember when Fantastic Four was the Forgotten One, going by the name Gilgamesh, and Reed Richards and Sue Storm, and then who was the fourth one? I don't think it.
No, that was Avengers. Yeah, it was Captain America when he was.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, no, it was Gilgamesh, and then that's right. Reed and Sue were on the Avengers at that point.
Yeah, for like 3 issues.
Yeah, well, hey, got me to buy.
I thought you were gonna say the Fantastic Four when it was Ben Grimm thing, the She thing, and Human Torch.
Yes, and Crystal, because.
Yeah, but then she left after a while when it was just the three.
Yeah. Although we got She-Thing back in the latest Fantastic Four, so that was nice of them to tie up some loose ends, although they left her on Rikers Island. So that sucks. And again, no one mentions, oh, by the way, have a cure for thingism whenever you want that. Whenever you want to be Sharon Venture again, just call up the kids. They got that in a bottle at the building,
But I saw something speaking of Fantastic Four, I saw something, was it Facebook or Twitter today, that someone said, isn't it peculiar that we haven't seen 1 second of footage from the new Fantastic Four movie, and isn't that supposed to be coming out this year?
Yeah. Well, that's because it's not a good.
Not good.
And many people have mentioned that. Gee, shouldn't we have seen something? And all we've seen is I think we saw a bust of the Thing, not even like a thing not even like a full statue, but just the shoulders and head of the Thing, which looked good. But most statues of the Thing look pretty good because the Thing looks good as a statue. It's when he moves that things get a little weird. And then we saw a very not good looking Doctor Doom, and then nothing else we've seen. Yeah,
because I don't think I've heard anything about trailers coming or this.
Well,
or that.
It's because honestly, I think that it's not going well, and I think they let Josh. It's one of these weird things where they say Marvel messed with the Fantastic Four to screw over Fox, but it seems like Fox is kind of shooting themselves in the foot on the Fantastic Four by giving it to someone who's just really going kind of weird with the way he's setting it up. And it's weird that we don't have anything to go on, because it's just something that's been pulled away. Of course, the Fantastic Four, I mean, they've been wanting to reboot it, and they always come up with it's the Fantastic. I'm going to be honest with you. The first Fantastic Four film, for whatever strengths or weaknesses you want to say it had, the guy who directed it really understood what the Fantastic Four was. And because I remember I was listening to him talk about it on the radio. He was saying, look, you actually read old Fantastic Fours from the 60s, and a lot of it is just them sitting around the Baxter Building bickering with each other. That doesn't make and that's what a lot of that film was them sitting around the Baxter Building bickering with each other and getting on each other's nerves, and to me that's why I liked that film, because yes, that's exactly what the Fantastic Four is. Not as good of a action film when you do it that way, but the Fantastic Four were never really an action title in many ways. I mean, they're kind of the family title. They're the guys chit-chatting with each other. It's
Explorers.
Very sciencey, nerdy. It's Big Bang Theory as superheroes.
Mm-hmm.
It's a bunch of people who are kind of awkward and have their problems with each other, and yet they also all happen to have amazing superpowers and occasionally have to fight Galactus.
Don't get started on Galactus. That second movie, they made him a giant cloud.
Yeah, well, you know why? Because they were afraid that people wouldn't want to see a guy in giant purple armor. And
well, then I'd just reconfigure the armor, but don't you think that would be scary? A giant being like the size of the planet or something?
Well, no, yeah, it would be amazing. But you have to remember that when Fantastic Four came out, this was sort of, I mean, it's this very, comic book films, when you look at them, they have this very rocky growth into what we have as the comic book films of today. When you start off with because it really starts, of course, with Tim Burton's Batman, which was in its own way very comic booky too, and actually I think that's why Tim Burton's Batman was really the superior Batman story, because it did embrace what made the comics great. I remember Tim Burton was talking about like the set design for Gotham, and he said, I really wanted it to be this place where what if there was no central planning in New York and it just grew wild, and so you have all these buildings and structures that have this artwork built into it, like giants holding up the bridge, and it makes for a great visually stunning image, but it also scares people in the studios because they don't want it to seem too comic booky. But I think that's the advantage that Disney has, because Disney, of course, they deal in fantasy. They've always dealt in fantasy, and they know that, hey, why would you be afraid to make it too comic booky? It's a comic book film. It's made for comic book nerds, and we're all comic book nerds in to some extent nowadays. And, and so you can have a giant celestial in armor in Guardians of the Galaxy, and you're just going to go along with it because it doesn't look silly. It looks like, because who knows what a celestial is going to look like? Well, it probably looks like that, It looks like Jack Kirby drew it, because that's who did. And I think that is, and I always say that's what Guardians of the Galaxy proved. And I think that's why they're moving forward so aggressively at Marvel now, because they know that they don't have to be afraid. They don't have to be afraid to embrace the silliness of it. They don't have to be afraid to embrace, the logical consistency or the worry about it, because, it's a comic book movie. And that's not to say that it's a silly story, but it's to say that it takes place in an inherently fanciful world. And, when you try to make it too much, oh, this is the real gritty world, well, that's, like I say, one of my problems with Gotham is that, you don't want to see the sausage of Batman being made. You don't want to see this sad, frightened kid who's just slowly going off his rocker till he gets to this point where he dresses up as a bat. It's not as pretty of a story when you get too realistic with it. And and that's the thing is, you have to be willing to let it be something separated from reality. You can have reality, and you can have the pretext of reality. I mean, that's what Stan Lee did. It's the pretext of reality that radiation gives you superpowers. Now, that is not reality by any stretch of the imagination, but it differentiates it from, oh, they just have magical powers. And so it's this idea that, yes, you want to have it be grounded in some kind of reality, but you never want it to be so grounded in reality that it just becomes something that doesn't make sense anymore. And I think
I was gonna say, with any of this, they didn't just what the fans want, what everyone wants, just stick as close to the source material as you can. Don't try to Hollywood it up too much.
Well, yeah, but you always have the problem when you say, well, you got to stick close to the source material because, well, what's the source material, I mean, and especially if you go over to DC, every incarnation you can conceive of has been out there in DC, and they have them out there, they have World War II Superman, they have future Superman, they have Superman who's dark and brooding, and Superman who's light and silly, you can break it down to all these places, and Marvel is no different. They have all these histories of their characters where they've done silly characters and fun characters and dark characters and brooding characters, and sometimes the same character goes through all those different incarnations. I mean, Captain America is a classic one for that, where even if you want to discount the 50s Captain America, where there was like officially different people were Captain America, is a big difference between the Captain America you see in the early 60s when it was written by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, and then when you get to the later 60s and 70s with I want to say Mark Grunwald was writing it, and he got very political with it, and then and you get to all these different variations on Cap over the years, and he does change. And sometimes he's very much a Boy Scout, sometimes he's very much a soldier, and it's a big difference between being a Boy Scout and a soldier, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And the same goes for all the characters, you know. Sometimes, you know, Reed is cold and aloof, and sometimes he's gregarious and silly, you know. And sometimes he's the absent-minded professor, sometimes he's the guy thinking 10 steps ahead of everyone, you know. And and that's how they break the characters down, and that's interesting. And so when you say, oh well, you want to stick close to the story, well, how much is the story? You know, is in Fantastic Four, are they going to space to beat the Ruskies to the moon, or are they testing out something else? You know, is there some other reason they're going into space? You know, and that's what they've often had to play with. You know, because at the end of the day, and I mean, heck, look at the Hulk. The Hulk is not the subject of a gamma bomb experiment gone awry. He's now a super soldier experiment gone awry, which is you know, to me is completely out of left field. But you know, it's fine because you get to the Hulk at the end, and how you got to the Hulk isn't nearly as important as having the Hulk. You know,
Yeah,
and
I don't think any of the live action Hulks have done the gamma bomb.
no, of course not. No, the gamma bomb is purely, well, first off, because we don't test atomic weapons anymore.
That's true.
Yeah, we know they work. We we realize, you know, there's not really a reason to keep on blowing these things up. We know they work. You know, it's one of these things. Of course, you know, one of those ideas is that I've always felt that, you know, what's the inherent difficulty of superheroes in an atomic age is that in a world with actual atom bombs, it's much harder to explain why you still have superheroes. You know, because you know, I mean, how well, at least on a national, you know, superhero warrior sense, because you know, superheroes, that's something that superheroes can't really fight against. It's something that no hero can defeat, really, is because even if they could, you know, it's an interesting question. Is, you know, atomic bombs are just so destructive.
Yeah, but do you think the governments of the world keep them just in case all the superhumans would actually, like, you know, turn evil or something?
Oh well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's your in-story explanation for why you have it. I mean, the basic idea of, you know, there was this, you know, in the amalgam series, you know, they have the Batman Wolverine character called Dark Claw, and he's actually the result of this government experimentation into, you know, healing, you know, into making the perfect weapon, and also the Jackal, who is the saber-tooth Joker amalgam. And you know, he makes this great concept. He says, you know, yeah, they were making the perfect weapon. The only thing that they forgot about with making a human into a perfect weapon is that most guns don't simply decide to get up off the table and start shooting people. You know, that's when you make a superhuman, you run that risk that it's just going to do its own thing. You know, and so I mean, that's the problem with any kind of superhero, any kind of weaponization of superhumans, is that you can't really control them. And that's why the governments don't really employ a lot of superhumans. Although officially, which was touched on in the X-Men, which is that there was actually a treaty, or maybe not an actual treaty, but just sort of a gentleman's agreement among the superpowers that they weren't going to deploy superheroes into combat anymore, because it would just lead to a much more dangerous and destructive arms race. And because that was when Colossus went back to Russia. A lot of his friends were like mad at him because he was off in the U.S. being an X-Man, and they were like, you know, why weren't you in Afghanistan with us? You know, you could have protected us. You could have, you know, because of course, you know, Afghanistan was very much Russia's Vietnam before it got to be our Vietnam again. Okay, let's not get too political, but yeah, but you know, and this was and he has a KGB handler who's following him around while he's there, and he's feeling bad, and he says, "Why didn't you guys send me to Afghanistan?" And he says, "Because if we sent you to Afghanistan, who would the U.S. send? You know, who you know, if we start throwing superheroes at each other, this gets very ugly very fast." And at the end of the day, although they didn't mention it, they have this very real problem that, okay, so we send all the superheroes to make war with each other. Once one of them wins, are they going to just sit down and listen to us? You know, say, okay, war's over, or are they going to say, well, now that, we're going to be in charge, you get your Red Sun storyline with the
Superman.
Superman, yes. Although there was along the same lines, there was actually a great Fantastic Four What If, where they had sort of the Soviet era Fantastic Four, and where I guess Franklin Richards gets captured on enemy lines, and Reed Richards is born in Russia, and actually it's him and Black Widow instead of Sue Storm and Ben Grimm. Very very good story. It was a What If series they had with a kid who found a way to hack into a computer network in an alternate universe. So he was pulling in all these characters from this alternate universe, and it was sort of like a what if of one alternate timeline, which we might get to see revisited in our upcoming Secret Wars, because we're pulling in a lot of characters from there. A lot of stuff. So yes. So a lot of stuff about alternate dimensions this week, and alternate timelines and alternate pasts, and yet it all still connects, or it connects if you don't look too closely. I think that's enough for this week. What do you think, Phil?
Yeah.
Okay, I have been Chuck Full of Nuts, Charlie Esser.
I am the Flying Phil Parrott.
And this has been SuperConnectivity. We'll talk to you next week.